Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times. I'm the Man of the West, also from the Prancing Pony podcast, and like I mentioned last week, I'm sticking with the poetry and songs from The Lord of the Rings for Series 8's readings on Third Age Thursday. That feedback from everybody was really encouraging. And today we're going to be looking at the rest of Bilbo's cheeky song about Eärendil the Mariner, hopefully finishing it up today. Last time we spent the bulk of the episode explaining the history of the poem and how there ended up being two versions, both existing in Middle-earth. One, Errantry, included in the Adventures of Tom Bombadil, and then this one. Now, as for the poem itself, we only got through Eärendil's trip home after being bewildered on enchanted ways. So let's pick up there. There flying Elwing came to him, and flame was in the darkness lit, more bright than light of diamond the fire upon her carcanet. The Silmaril she bound on him, and crowned him with the living light, and dauntless then with burning brow he turned his prow, and in the night from other world beyond the sea, there strong and free a storm arose, a wind of power in Tarmanel. By paths that seldom mortal goes, his boat it bore with biting breath, as might of death across the grey and long forsaken seas distressed. From east to west he passed away. Through ever night he back was borne on black and roaring waves that ran o'er leagues unlit and foundered shores that drowned before the days began. Until he heard on strands of pearl, where ends the world, the music long, where ever foaming billows roll, the yellow gold and jewels wan. He saw the mountains silent rise, where twilight lies upon the knees of Valinor, and Eldamar beheld afar beyond the seas. A wanderer escaped from night, to haven white he came at last, to elven home the green and fair, where keen the air, where pale as glass beneath the hill of Ilmarin, a glimmer in a valley sheer, the lamplit towers of Tirion are mirrored on the shadow mere. He tarried there from Errantry, and melodies they taught to him, and sages old him marvels told, and harps of gold they brought to him. They clothed him then in elven white, and 7 lights before him sent, as through the Calachirion to hidden land forlorn he went. He came unto the timeless halls, where shining fall the countless years, and endless reigns the elder king in Ilmarin on mountain sheer. And words unheard were spoken then of folk, of men, and elven kin. Beyond the world were visions showed, forbid to those that dwell therein. A ship then new they built for him, of mithril and of elven glass, with shining prow, no shaven oar nor sail she bore on silver mast. The Silmaril is lantern light and banner bright with living flame, to gleam thereon by Elbereth herself was set, who thither came and wings immortal made for him, and laid on him undying doom, to sail the shoreless skies and come behind the sun and light of moon. From Evereven's lofty hills, where softly silver fountains fall, his wings him bore, a wandering light beyond the mighty mountain wall. From world's end there he turned away, and yearned again to find afar his home through shadows journeying, and burning as an island star on high above the mists he came. A distant flame before the sun, a wonder ere the waking dawn, where grey the Norland waters run. And over Middle-earth he passed, and heard at last the weeping sore of women and of elven maids in elder days, in years of yore. But on him mighty doom was laid, till moon should fade, an orbed star to pass and tarry nevermore on hither shores where mortals are, for ever still a herald on an errand that should never rest, to bear his shining lamp afar, the Flammifer of Westerness. That's a fun one to read. It's not an easy one, but it's a fun one. Now, let's go back and look at each of the stanzas. The 4th stanza shows Eärendil met by Elwing, who brings him the Silmaril. And with this new light, they're able to get back on course and make their way into the west. And yes, it is Elwing who saves her men, not the other way around. In the first few lines, many references to light, right? Flame in the darkness lit, bright light of diamond, fire. That, by the way, carcanet is an archaic word for an ornamental collar or necklace, usually of gold or set with jewels. Now, we see the Silmaril that's called the living light, and Eärendil is now dauntless, right? He's fearless, determined in his course, with a burning brow, with the Silmaril on his brow. Now, as for Tarmanel, Tolkien's unfinished index defines that as high heaven, region of wind, suggesting that Manwë himself may have blown this wind. And so now he passes back out of the darkness with his light, and from east to west, inverting the previous stanza, giving that push and pull of each stanza pair that evokes that back and forth of Eärendil's journey. But the 5th stanza is a little different. As the 5th stanza in this 9-stanza poem, it stands, no pun intended, in the middle. Interestingly, it's also the one that, as a result, does not belong to a thematic pair. In a way, it's a thematic pair on its own. Roughly the first half contains references to sound images, while the second half has all the visual references. So let's take a look. Roaring waves, heard the music long. And then in the second half, saw the mountain silent rise. Again, lack of sound, just as the previous half began with lack of sight. We also get haven white, green and fair, pale as glass, and so on. Now, the sixth stanza shows Eärendil resting and gaining some wisdom from the Eldar and Valar. It's a little different from the story that we know from the Silmarillion, in which Eärendil still had quite a bit of work to do after docking. But Bilbo's purpose here is to show him getting a partial reward for his labors so far and some well-earned rest. And there are many words in this passage that evoke stillness in the sense of lack of motion, but also in the sense of timelessness. Tarried from Errantry. Rest, yes, but also a nod to the original poem. He's taught and brought harps and clothes and more, so rewards for his accomplishment. And then he hears words unheard by men and elves, and he's shown visions unseen by others. Now, the seventh stanza shows Eärendil having been rested and rewarded, ready to start a new journey. This one's a bit longer term, though. As we saw in lots of images of stillness and timelessness in the previous stanza, we see images of motion here and of time ticking on forever. As to the ship, we get things like no shaven oar nor sail, so it's direct reference to some new divine propulsion, as well as the living flame of the Silmaril, which is similar to the living light from the fourth stanza. It evokes something that's alive and animated and not still or static. And by the way, consider how significant it is that Elbereth, Varda herself, the one who hallowed the Silmarils in the first place, gives him back the Silmaril. Now, of course, because he knows it's not his, he is to borrow it for a sacred mission from the Valar. Then we get a few more words of timelessness and endlessness, as well as sailing the skies and come behind the sun and moon. And in the eighth stanza, well, we see his return to Middle-earth, the hero's triumphant return. But in the ninth stanza, it's completely inverted. He can never come back to the Middle-earth that he loves. And this ninth stanza underscores his sacrifice, his unending errand to bring hope to the world, and it is a crucial one. He flies over and he hears the weeping sore of women and of elven maids. He'd like nothing more than to comfort them, but he can't. All he can do is fly above and hope they see him as a sign that the Valar are listening, a sign of hope. Estel, not Amdir. We get lines like, on him mighty doom was laid. That's similar to the undying doom in stanza 7. Till moon should fade. That's pretty darn close to forever, but it is not actually forever. Tarry nevermore, so no breaks for you, Eärendil, except maybe when you sail back to Valinor and hang out with Elwing for a bit. You are now a herald on an errand that should never rest, in case that hasn't sunk in yet. And of course, the Flammifer of Westerness. For more on that word, look to episode 141 of the PPP, which is the third episode of Mini Meetings, or wait till next week's Word Nerd Wednesday. Folks, thank you for joining me for this week's Third Age Thursday. Stick around for more poetry over the rest of this series with First Age Fridays and our read through the Lay of Lathian. Check out patreon.com/Tolkien Times to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, join the Content Council, get a bonus episode every week, and more. And then join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times for more quality cantos. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Follow or subscribe in your podcast apps and follow @Tolkien Times on all your social media. And finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.